Arise News, we do things different. We cover every culture, every angle. Our mission is to go to these places, to these communities, whether they're in Africa, whether they're in Europe, Asia, the United States, the Caribbean. And we're going to find these stories and we're going to tell them to our audience. Stories that they probably never heard of before, and stories that they'll find interesting and engaging. In business news today, 3 things to know. First, domino effect. U.S. stocks take a dive after global markets slump over financial uncertainty in Russia, Greece, and China. Then, knockout, fighting superbugs and winning the battle. How businesses are helping to combat deadly diseases like malaria and saving lives around the world. And let's make a toast. The fizz is back in champagne sales and why the business of bubbly is sparkling more than ever. Arise Exchange starts now. This is the King George County landfill in Central Virginia. It's a garbage dump where all forms of human waste are deposited on a daily basis. It's probably the last place where Americans would imagine some of their fallen heroes might end up. But after her own investigative work, it's exactly where Jerry Lynn Smith discovered that portions of her husband's remains came to rest.
The air assaults from the sea are still considered the jab and hook of this fight. And as the battle for Baghdad rages, there's still confidence among U.S.-led forces. Today's actually not so bad. Visibility is about 10, maybe 20 feet. That's 3 or 4 car lengths if you're driving. You have to constantly wear something over your nose and mouth to keep from eating or even breathing it.
Hello and welcome to Arise America. I'm Gary Anthony Ramsay. In the news today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he has a moral obligation to speak out against an Iran nuclear deal. Also, a scathing report by the Department of Justice. It accuses Ferguson police of racial bias against African Americans. And the presidency in black and white. White House reporter April Ryan gives us the inside scoop on race relations at 1600 Pennsylvania. We'll have all that and much more right now on Arise America. The man behind the leak into government surveillance programs is no longer in a Hong Kong hotel. He's instead hiding out. Meantime, Washington lawmakers are digging deeper into the secret program and are asking the NSA some tough questions. Christina Brown has our report. The relationship between Israel and the United States, and you have to juxtapose that really against the relationship between these two men. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn or giving away a spoiler. They clearly don't like each other. They've said some things about each other that have been made public. How does that relationship, for the next 2 years at least, affect Middle East policy and what happens to Israel and with its neighbors? It's an amazing perspective considering, how lily white the White House is considered for you to be there through 3 administrations. I mean, what is the largest takeaway from your book? Because you do actually grade the various administrations. There was an issue about a worry about whether rebels would want to give up any of the gains that they had achieved during the fighting actually while the negotiations were taking place. What do you think Putin had to concede, if anything, in this deal? Much from Missouri as a result of the non-indictment in the Ferguson case. A lot of talk about economic boycotts in major urban areas. Did any of that have an effect or an impact? It's the largest hold button pushed on a drilling project in the oil industry. Amid plunging oil prices over the last 6 months worldwide, Chevron has announced that it's suspending its plan to drill in the Arctic indefinitely. With more on the impact of falling oil prices, Darren Sharinga, Chief Investment Officer at Yorkville Capital Management, joins us on the set here. Thank you for coming to the Exchange.
Gary, it's a pleasure to be here.
So is this project at Chevron, is that the tip of the spear in terms of what to expect from the oil industry in terms of new projects and R&D and all of that down the road? Arise serves underserved communities by bringing them news, information, sports, and entertainment from places that are becoming part of the world economy, that are becoming a part of the world voice, and decisions that are affecting things in the world that people care about. They care about the economy. They care about safety and security. I remember in the 80s, ethanol was the big American energy boom. OPEC decided not to slow production, actually increase production and kill that industry. Is this the same playbook here? And from the right, my old friend Horace Cooper, who's a legal commentator and fellow with the National Center for Policy. I said old Horace, as in I've known you a while.
Long time.
Not in terms of your age. So let's just make sure that is.
Thanks for that.
Make sure that we're clear on that. After days of peaceful anti-NATO protests, the city of Chicago showed demonstrators another side of their hospitality. In 1 hour, near the end of Sunday's rally, police more than double their arrests after aggressively shutting down the demonstration and roughing up a few protesters along the way.
They didn't give it 2 seconds. They wanted the trouble. They wanted to come in and start it right away. A lot of the attitudes of these cops, and let me tell you, I don't mess with the cops. I try to be respectful. They are looking for it. So they moved in, they grabbed me by the collar, 2 cops, and threw me up on the curb and said if I stepped down, I'd get arrested.
They came out with batons drawn. They didn't let anyone go anywhere. It was a completely peaceful protest. Literally, we needed to ask one guy at least 7 or 8 times, please let us out, please let us out, please let us out, and he didn't.
More than 5,000 people took part in the all-day rally that started in Grant Park. As they marched through the streets of downtown, police using barricades and vans corralled most of the masses into a 4-block area and then penned them in. More than a third of Chicago's police department has been assigned just to provide security for this event. And they're not alone. They've been joined by thousands of other police officers from the State Police Division and law enforcement agencies from other states, all under the jurisdiction of the FBI.
There has not been any violence on a part of protesters. So I don't understand why if somebody's sitting or standing, they have to be hit with billy clubs. There's really no reason for that.
Before the end of Sunday's protest, dozens of Middle East war vets threw their medals into a trash bin, declaring their disappointment with fighting in these conflicts. Conflicts that are likely to continue since NATO nations are not expected to announce any measures that will pull them out of these wars sooner rather than later. Gary Anthony Ramsay, Press TV, Chicago. His name is Trayvon Martin, a 17-year-old Florida high school student looking forward to visiting with his father and watching a basketball game on February 26th. But someone else would soon see him in a different, deadly way. As he walks through the gated community where his dad lives, volunteer neighborhood watchman George Zimmerman spots him and begins to follow. Minutes later,
What is your number? Just first gunshot.
Trayvon Martin is dead. The shooter, Zimmerman, who is white, claims self-defense and is not initially arrested by police. But the black teenager was carrying only a can of iced tea and a bag of candy.
That was murder! Murder!
Tragically, he is not the only unarmed African American to die at the hands of a white American in recent years. In fact, he is among dozens of men gunned down or killed by a person in law enforcement, someone taking the law into their own hands, or breaking the law. What may seem surprising, these egregious acts are on the rise since the election of America's first black president. Some people believe the United States is now in a post-racial society. But millions of African American men live their lives wondering if they could end up like a Trayvon Martin or hundreds of others who were unarmed but nevertheless shot and killed by police. I'm Gary Anthony Ramsay. On this week's edition of In Focus, we look at a number of cases that highlight this crisis in America, where men of color, and sometimes women, are put in someone's sights and targeted simply for breathing while black.